man. Anywho. What is up, everybody, and welcome to Fins Talk OT. It has been a little bit. I was trying to get to us. We had a little chaos going. We're trying to get to you before some of the breaking news we've had of the Dolphins over this last week, but it's still not too late to talk about it. I am your host, Bret Legassi, and I am joined by my good man, Greg Miney. Greg, it's been a few weeks. How are you doing?
Been doing good. Been doing good. Been reading all the stuff coming out of training camp and kind of chuckling to myself in the background. So we're gonna get involved, get into that here today. So yeah, let's
What
let's get going.
I,
Lots of good news, lots of things to talk about.
are you telling me right now that all the production that they're having in camp is just fodder? There's no way.
No, I mean, hey, I I've been monitoring camps for a while now, and it's amazing how you're always on this close to winning the Super Bowl in training camp. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So
off-season
everything's great.
champs. We have
Oh,
the trophy. We have won the offseason more than any other team in the history of the NFL. But we have a lot to talk about. A lot's happened. Some of the stuff we kind of expected. And it was weird because the people who were all adamant about Tua getting paid all of a sudden were the ones panicking. They were quickly turning on Greer, which that's something that we could discuss later. Um, and I think most of us knew it was going to happen. They're at the point where they kind of left themselves no choice but to pay him.
yeah,
So we knew it was going to happen, and the structure's surprising, honestly. But it happened, and
yeah,
we saw it was going to happen, and he's their quarterback of the near future of the next at least 2 to 3 years.
yeah, correct. And on this show with you and Evan, on Steve's show a couple weeks ago and stuff like that before he was signed, I I, I mentioned I was like Tua has all the leverage. All right. He's going to make 300 million plus during his career in the NFL. This
Yeah,
is just the first step of that. All right. He had all the leverage. If the Dolphins made him play on his fifth year, he was going to get signed this deal next year. Okay.
right.
Or
Yeah,
the year after or whatever, even if he got hurt. Okay. Because unless it was a career ending injury, he was going to get signed for this. So, it was inevitable. It was going to happen. And when it's all shakes out, he's making $50+ million a year for the next 3 years, and that's basically what it is. I mean, that's kind of what everybody else is doing right now. So it's not a bad deal. I was hoping that they wouldn't stay, that they had some outs
yeah.
because we knew he was going to play this year. They basically guaranteed 2 more years at the end of this,
Hmm.
gave him a bump. He's going to make $152 million through 2026, and then 2027 you can reevaluate. So,
Right.
I mean, it's really not a bad deal for either party.
It's really it's not, and it's funny because so many people like touting him as, oh, he needs to get paid. Oh, they paid Justin Herbert, they paid Trevor Lawrence, this and that. And like you pointed out, they paid them at the end of their fourth year, and it was essentially a 3 year extension, foregoing their fifth year option in
Right.
a sense. And so they paid them, so they got their fifth year, 6 year, seventh year. And Miami was able to basically squeeze that into this year to where it's
Right.
the fifth year, 6 year, seventh year. So there's an out there. Now, just so everybody knows, if everything were to just derail for 24 and 25, let's say the worst case scenario happens, there's a potential out 27, but in 2026, a post 6-1 trade, honestly, before 6-1, you could trade or release him and you would have a dead cap of 25, but you would save 38.2.
Right.
And then post 6-1, you would break that 25 million up over 26 and 27. It'd be 8.4 and 26 and 16.8 and 27. And then you would save 55 million. So honestly, it was actually hats off to Greer and Brandon Shore for structuring it to where realistically, if they really wanted to, if he plays poorly, regresses, or just keeps getting injured, they could trade him after 25 and not really be hurting. And we saw that with Jared Goff with the Rams. He signed a deal. 2 years later, he was traded because they just like, well, you know what? We signed him. He was our guy for that time, and Stafford became available. You can't tell me right now if somebody unexpectedly becomes available on the trade block that Miami would be stuck with them after. So they have options.
Yeah. If after this year in 2025, all right, even if Tua plays well, okay,
Mhm.
if Mike McDaniel comes to the Sean McVay decision that, hey, we're close here and the quarterback's holding us back, we need to get another quarterback. After 25, they could do it.
Mhm.
I don't see that happening. I think
No,
that's a I think that's going to be a stretch, okay? But it is possible.
yeah,
And and you know, I, thank God Evan's not here, but I trust McDaniel. I the more that I watch him, the more that I like him. And even so far in camp this preseason, I've liked the things he said.
who
Um,
Tua or
Tua and
McDaniel?
McDaniel.
Well,
Yeah.
Tua come out looking slimmer than he has since he got in the league. And again, shout out to Josh Wingate, who's also on the network. Him and we talked about it when we did a show together back in 2020 and 2021. We talked about Tua, and we both brought up Tom House, and then Josh like he needs to work with Tom House, like we did for Breeze. And the first thing Tom House does isn't throwing related; it's to get your gut right, and it's to get your health right. Because as an athlete, like for me, working every day, I don't have to worry about that as much. Should I eat right and be healthy? Yeah, but as a professional athlete, it's so critical to be able to take that next step. Tom Brady could attest to this. Drew Brees could attest to this. Their longevity. They had to get that diet tweaked just right, and it's the small things. He wants to see like there's stuff that you can be allergic to that you really don't notice that causes bloating. He gets that out of the way, gets him healthy, gets him throwing technique without wearing his arm down. And that was a huge deal for me because Tua's arm is smoked by the end of the year. Fitzpatrick used to say he threw too much, his arm was smoked by the end of the year. That just happens with quarterbacks. All these, like even Josh Allen, who has a cannon of an arm and says his arm doesn't get tired, they did the same thing with him. It was just smart technique. And that's something I was like, you know what? It's less wear and tear on him, less injuries we're going to have to worry about with Tua. He's looking more nimble. He looks like he's moving better. Between 22 and 23, he looks slow. He looked really slow compared to before. He's never been a great athlete. He's always tried to be a better athlete than he is, but he's always been decent enough to move and scramble. But 22 and 23, he did not look like that at all. So it would be nice to see him get back to that. But he looks in to be in good shape, confident. And again, that confidence comes from just knowing your skills and knowing what you've said before. When everything falls apart, you don't have to sit there and think, "Oh, what are my feet doing with my arms?" It's automatically because that's what a confidence is. You don't have to think about all that; it just comes natural.
Yep. First, shout out to Steve. How you doing? See you there in the comments. But he from the footage that I've seen, he looks good.
Mhm.
Physically he looks good. That's why I'm looking forward to getting down there this week. Hopefully, if the tropical storm hurricane allows me to get to Miami this week. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him in camp. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the stuff in preseason. looking forward to seeing some of the stuff that's been floated online. From anybody from Kurt Warner to some of the other quarterback follows that I have online, just to see the timing and his spot throws and stuff like that. And you know, I got opinions that I'm hoping that you know he squashes some of them. Let's put it that way. So.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, like, there's some more to talk about here, and so we'll wrap up on the Tua talk because he's here to stay. Whether we like it or
Yeah.
not, whether anybody likes it or not. I do trust McDaniel to touch on that because I think McDaniel has shown that even if Tua has hit his ceiling, he got the most out of Tua. He got a lot out of Tua,
Right.
and he got a lot out of this offense, and he overcame a lot of this offense. And for the people who said the people who continue to say that play calling is still a problem when they're watching camp, you don't know what you're watching. I'm not mean that in an ignorant way, but if you're blaming play calling, you don't know what you're watching. You don't understand the flow of the game. You don't understand offenses and routes and decision making. And not saying he's a perfect play caller by any stretch of it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a lot more into it that if you were to sit down with McDaniel and break down plays with him, I almost guarantee you, and this goes for me too, your head would probably spin, and that would just be the first day of his playbook, first day installs. He's a very creative guy, very intelligent guy. The system is complex, and that's why our rookies struggle already, like to mentally get it, and that's something difficult for them to do. But like, I'm not giving up Malik Washington because the kid is a stud. His film was pretty impressive, but it's a lot for him to learn.
Yeah, and like I said, the more we get into the McDaniel system, the more that we hear from the Kurt Warners of the world and things like that, the more we understand what's actually happening. You
Mhm.
know, me and you've talked about trying to suss some things out and things like that. You know, the big thing now is timing accuracy and spot throwing, right?
Mhm.
Timing accuracy and spot throwing. Well, he's always had pretty good timing.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but essentially, the timing ends after the first read.
Right.
Okay. And he's been good at anticipating things on the first read. That second read gives him issues.
Yeah.
Still moving, going forward. All right. And and I'm going to say something here, and it's going to sound contradictory, but I really don't mind spot throwing. Okay.
No.
All right. I like it in certain situations, and when you have the number one player in the league, as just voted on, Tyreek Hill. All right. You know, I'm okay saying Tyreek Hill's better than your cover guy. Your
Yeah.
your coverage. Tyreek Hill is that good. Okay. So throw to a spot and have him do it. But let's understand what spot throwing is. Okay. Spot throwing is basically anticipation, throwing to a spot, and expecting your wide receiver to get there. Okay.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with coverage. So, although those times when you break down film and you're like, why the hell is he throwing the ball there? It's because he's spot throwing. All right.
Mhm.
It's the and the what a defense calls that is it's a bailout throw. All right. You're throwing into my coverage. This is what
Yeah.
I want you to do. You're expecting your wide receiver to bail you out. Okay. Again, that works when it's Tyreek Hill.
Right.
It might work a little bit to Jalen Waddle. All right. But let's understand what it is. It's throwing into coverage. And then the other thing about this is, all right, it's based on accuracy, it's based on timing,
Mhm.
and it's based on reading the defense. You change any one of those three things, it's probably going to be an incompletion or even worse, an interception.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the three things that affect that? Well, the defense can take away the spot. Okay, which we saw toward the end of last year, a number of times. All right. The other thing is what affects timing? Weather.
Yeah. Well, we
All
saw
right,
that
weather and
in
wind.
against
Okay,
Kansas City.
Correct. If you're going to play in cold, that's going to slow down your wide receiver. It's going to slow down the timing, and it's going to give everybody else a little bit more time to react. If you play
Yep.
in wind, you got to have that arm to be able to throw it through it to get it there when it's supposed to get there. Okay. And if that means you have to hold on to it a little bit longer so that you drive it instead of float it or something like that, that's what happens.
Right.
So when you hear spot throw and when you see on film that he's throwing into coverage, and even Mike White commented on it in training camp,
Oh
saying
yeah.
how Tua can basically throw it to spot, and you're going, why is he throwing there? And then a wide receiver comes in and takes it. It's all based on timing. It's all based on
Mhm.
location and things like that. And once you start getting into November and December, when the weather changes and you're playing in colder weather, the timing gets thrown off. That and you're playing good defenses that are taking spots away,
Yep.
you have a game that kind of looks like Kansas City. All right.
Or
And
Philly.
or Philly or a couple other things. I mean, it just that's the way this works. Bruce Arians ran it very well with Kurt Warner, Hall of Fame player Kurt Warner with Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Marshall Falk. Okay, they were in a dome. Okay,
Yeah. When they had
okay,
March running that, it was all in the dome, perfect weather conditions.
correct. And they were the best team in the NFC, so they had home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
Yep.
So weather and conditions never played a factor in that.
Yep.
Drew Brees did it a lot. Played in a dome.
Yep.
Okay, for this offense and for that type of scheme to be successful in Miami, you better be at home in December and January and
Yep.
playing playoff games at home. All
Yeah.
right.
Or you better have a
That's
run game.
that's my issue. Or you better
Yeah.
have a run game.
Well,
All
and
right.
so we talked about that and how this team is built. The team's built to win in Miami.
Yes.
The problem with that is we have games in Foxborough, games in Buffalo, games in New Jersey
In December
in
and
December.
January.
Right. So, and that becomes an issue. However, into his defense, in 22, he did play really well, considerably well against Buffalo comparatively,
Yeah.
because in 22 he actually the game was close and it was too little, too
Right.
late, and it was had to be kind of a comeback. But he was not like terrible. And then this year in Miami against Buffalo, where we're built to win, come up short, and that was my problem. The game against the Ravens, that was just a beatdown. And Miami again, and I'm living in Delaware. I hate when we lose to the Ravens because John Harbaugh owns us. John Harbaugh is our daddy. I'm sorry to say it. The Dolphins have not consistently beat John Harbaugh ever since uh, 2008 or 2007, that Greg Rio miraculous win.
Mhm.
Like, John Harbaugh has like beat us a lot, very often, and it's frustrating. And a lot of the times the games were lopsided and some were close. But man, it was frustrating to see because it was like we're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. We're just getting punched in the mouth, bullied around, and we just go in the on the playground, and the kid just took our lunch money. The bullies just, and we didn't do nothing about it. And that's the kind of thing. And people say, "Well, oh, we'll lose to the best." Well, you have to beat the Ravens. You have to beat the Chiefs. You have to beat the Bills. These are teams, and even
Oh,
the
yeah.
Texans. These are teams you're going to have to line up against. Now, the Texans, you stand a chance against on the road because they're in a dome. But
Right.
Buffalo on the road, Kansas City on the road, the Ravens on the road, the Steelers on the road, the Bengals. These are not fun conditions to play in. And here's where to your caveat to the December thing. I also want to see McDaniel start adjusting the offense and Tua start reading things. As excited as I am to see him work with Tom House and to see that physically turn the corner, can he turn the corner mentally? Now we need to see him be able to say, "Hey, we're not going to be spot throwing all game. This is going to be a game plan maybe for this defense." But as soon as they switch to zone coverage, he needs to be able to read and say, "Oh, they're taking that away. I can't just throw it there because they have a guy at every spot that I'll be throwing at every level, and they got athletes all over the defense. We can't do that." And that's where the Chiefs just took it away from Tua. Took all
It,
those
it's
that away from him and froze him. So it that's something that they're going to have to adapt. And I'm hoping, just like 22 to 23, McDaniel adds more wrinkles to the offense that helps that.
No, that and if you look at the Rams with Golf, and then look at the Rams with Stafford, okay, Golf was very good the year they went to the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
All right. But he wasn't great at the end of the year, and he wasn't great in the Super Bowl because he was relying on stuff like that, and Belichick
Hmm.
basically ate his lunch, right?
Right.
Stafford, they don't do as much motion. They don't do as many
No.
things right uh, at all that McVay likes to do because Stafford can drop back, set protections, read the defense,
Right.
and even audible into the better play
Yep.
to get them where they need to go. And there was a thread about that, a couple months ago,
Right.
talking about how on a Saturday night before a Sunday game, you know, Stafford went to McVay and said, "Hey, if the defense shows us this, I want to go into verticals. I
Yeah.
want to go into all verticals." And I'm gonna audible to that, and it ended up being a touchdown. Okay, no motion, no nothing like that. He saw the blitz, he saw what was coming, and he goes, "I'm
Went
going to
right
go
to it.
all verticals," and basically set the protection with a guy who was running free, but he was
Hmm.
far enough away that he knew he had enough time, and basically completed a long pass to uh, uh,
Was that
the
Puka
rookie,
Nakua?
yeah, Nakua, for a touchdown.
Hmm.
Okay, that's the difference. That's
Right.
what we've been talking
Yeah.
about, having this offense have to take the next step. That was the next step, and that's
Right.
what basically got him to the Super Bowl. Was that quarterback, you know, making a difference on those 5-10% of the plays that were going to be bad.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And not throwing a play away.
Yep.
And that's the offense needs to evolve, and Tua needs to evolve to get to that point.
And that's something that I have said for a while now. That hey, it, you said it. We talked about this, and I've said, like, Tua could do all the physical things he wants to do. And last year we said when he come back from work with his trainer to camp, there's videos in his trainer. The the mechanics were off, and then he had to go back, and then you see him in camp, and it's like the mechanics were falling apart. And this year it seems like the mechanics are there because who he worked with was pushing those. So it's nice to see. So I'm less worried about. He's more confident there. But stop me. This sounds familiar. You have a head coach that's very offensive brilliant. He calls the plays of his quarterback, gets a young quarterback that the defensive coach previously could not get the most out of. This young, bright, offensive-minded coach comes in, coaches this kid up, gets him playing very well, makes him a playoff quarterback. But he has to coach him all the way through the mic cutting off. They don't have time for audibles. They have to do a lot of motions and gimmicks. And now all of a sudden they have to keep doing that, and it limits the offense, and the offense can only go so far. That's Jared Goff and the Rams, but that's also Tua and McDaniel.
Right.
That's the only reason I consider, other than McVay and McDaniel have come from the same tree. They coach quarterbacks together. The reason I'm saying that, I don't care what anybody says. Tua is not on a higher level than Golf. If anything, they're on the same playing field. But Golf is better in the playoffs. However, Golf had to be coached all the way through to the mic cutoff. And I believe that's why the play calls take forever to get in. And I believe that's why Tua isn't calling audibles at the line of scrimmage, because
Right.
he doesn't have time or know what he's looking at. And I think that's always been his problem. If you go watch his college tape, watch him against Georgia in the SEC championship. Kirby Smart knew it. He would roll coverages. South Carolina did it to him, and Clemson did it to him. The most active defenses gave him fits. As a starter, he never won because of that, because he would struggle after the ball was snapped where he was supposed to go with the ball. He couldn't find it. So when the windows tightened, he did not like that. He liked flowing wide open, and you can't do it. So now it's time to see the film work put in, the mental aspect of it. And that's we're not going to really see that until December, or like November, December timeframe, and see how he starts doing when the schedule gets tougher, and think the windows get tighter.
Well, and Kurt Warner and a number of people have mentioned this. His strengths are his anticipation and accuracy. Okay,
Hmm.
you take the first read away, he loses the ability to anticipate. All right, so when that happens, where does he struggle? He struggles when he has to improvise. He struggles when that anticipation part of his read goes away. Okay, when he holds the ball.
Yeah,
All right.
he doesn't like that. He wants the
He
ball out quick.
he wants the ball out quick. The offense wants the ball out quick.
Mhm. And I
It
get it.
is it is what it is.
Every
But
team wants that.
correct, correct. But like I said, his strength is his anticipation. All right, and his accuracy with that anticipation. If that first read's not there, that goes away.
Hmm.
Okay, and a lot of people have commented. Kurt Warner has even commented on it that he needs to get better on his second and third. All right, I don't believe there is a third. It's basically one, two, and improvise.
Yeah.
But when if his biggest strength is his anticipation, then his anticipation goes away after that first read.
Hmm.
Okay, why does it go away? Because he's not really reading anything. Okay, in a way.
Yeah.
All right, the offense is set up for him to basically have either or he's spot throwing and he's doing other things. Like I said, the more we learn about this offense, the more it makes sense to me as to how Tua is functioning in it. Okay,
Hmm.
and the difference between what he's doing now and what Golf did at LA compared to what Stanford did in LA, that's the difference in the offense.
Hmm.
It's that little thing right there to say, I don't need emotions and shifts to tell me what the defense is doing. I know what the defense is doing. I have now time to get into a better play,
Hmm.
and then I can execute that play.
Right.
Okay. The accuracy should still be there. The anticipation should still be there if he's not getting help reading defenses. Okay. And that's the part that I want to see him get better at.
Right.
Now, it's hard to see on the camp video whether that's actually working or not.
And
They're not they're
we
very
don't know.
limited as to what they're showing,
Yeah.
but it does seem that he's moving better.
Yeah.
All right. And that might be the first step.
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing. The other thing I pointed out with that whole pressure thing is too he's not recognizing the blitz coverages, and players are coming free. And now for you watching, Scotty, I see everybody. Thank you for watching. By the way,
yes,
make sure you like, subscribe, share it. Scotty brings up the offensive line. Here's the thing with the offensive line. Yeah, I have an issue with the guys Greer brings on the offensive line. Most of them are soft as cottonelle. I have a problem with how Greer builds the offensive line. They're not physical, really. I have questions about why they have so many centers that have come in that aren't actual centers. Brewer has played center, was a center in college, but he was moved to guard in Tennessee after his rookie year, then back to center last year. So there's a lot of frustration with the whole with that. But the other aspect of it too, the offense is moving a lot, and there's a lot of moving. Tua rushes to his drops sometimes, or speeds up his drops to be able to get to his drop in time for Tyreek, because Tyreek runs so fast. Um, so like there's some aspects that get so deep into it, but for you guys watching, there will be a lot of times that a free runner will come on a blitz. That's to be expected. And usually the quarterback will know by looking at how the defense does, looking at the tendencies, they'll say, like Greg always says, big on big, small on small. If I look at my offensive line and I see the adjustment, I make the adjustment to slide protection, whatever protection I'm going to adjust to. I see who's in the box and who's the tendency to blitz. I know I'm blocking. I got 6 blockers. They're showing 7 to 8. I got a free man coming, but I have my escape out over here, and I know that's my valve. And I'm just going back to the reading and not being able to throw to just windows. And I say, or spots, and I say, okay, I got this right over here, this right over here. I got this coverage here. Okay, I know I'll have pressure. Let's just say from the right side, I'm going to have it pressure. And well, I'd rather Tua see it from the right side because then he can see the pressure coming, and I'll throw it right at the pressure. Like, what's that called, Greg? When they would say when you throw it at the pressure, it's replace.
Oh,
I forgot.
you replace the blitzer.
Yeah. So like if the
So
blitzers
it,
come in, you have a good chance of
yeah,
throwing at him. And what you guys will see, you
yeah,
see like a defender tip the pass. Sometimes when that's blitzing,
yeah,
sometimes when that happens, the quarterback knows that's going to happen, and it's technically a throwaway, and he's just kind of like maybe trying to get it there. The defender tips it,
yeah.
knows it's coming. The quarterback knows, hey, this might be a broken play. I might be able to get to my check valve. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a broken play. We're going to go
Right.
direct.
It-
So that's what a lot of people don't understand. So you got to stop blaming the offensive line for the pressures. Quarterbacks will face pressure in the NFL, and Tua is not pressured any more than the rest of the league. Like
right.
he didn't rank any like crazy high as pressures go.
And a couple of things. All right. Um, what you talk about is replacing the blitzer is basically a hot route concept
Yeah.
that you teach your wide receivers at a very basic level. If you see a blitz, you go to the place that he blitzed from. It
Right.
should be open. All right. It's a little more complicated than that, but
Right. Yeah.
it is what it is,
I was
right?
just keeping it simple.
Yeah.
But
All right.
I,
But
I say that real quick, Greg. Sorry, I'm not saying Tua can't do any of these things. This is stuff we were missing that was kind of hurting us last year. This is just stuff we just want to see, and we're not saying he hasn't
right.
done it. We're not saying he hasn't worked on it. This is just stuff we would like to see get better, and it will make a big difference in the offense.
Correct. And for the most part, when you look, the way offenses are set up now, a defense doesn't rely on individual players to beat offensive line or anything like that to get pressure on a quarterback. You're not going to pressure a quarterback beating a block in 2.5 seconds.
Hmm.
Okay. You're just not going to do this. The offensive line really just has to get in the way. All right. That's that's why there's a de-emphasis on offensive line in general. Okay. But they just have to get in the way. So what defensive coordinators are doing is they're scheming ways to confuse the quarterback and the blocking schemes and the O-line calls to get a free rusher. Because if you want to get there in under 2.5 seconds, it's got to be a free rusher.
Hmm.
Okay, that's the only way to do it. All
And you don't
right,
want to overload to be obvious because then
you don't want to
there's
overload to be obvious
obviously a
because
one-on-one
it
or a wide open
and
receiver.
people will see that like there's a free blitzer coming, but the offensive lineman, only 3 out of the 5 are engaged. Well, that's because the offensive lineman assesses who the 5 most dangerous are. They make the call, and if they don't rush, they're still not responsible to pick up somebody else. Every now and then, an offensive lineman, uh, in empty, let's say, all right, an offensive tackle will have an either or assignment. All
Hmm.
right, if the linebacker comes inside, that's number one, or I
Right.
go out to block the defensive end. All right, but that's just the rules of the offensive lineman. That's not necessarily the case. When you identify the 5 that you're going to block, and 1 or 2 of them don't come, and then a free rusher comes, that is assigned to somebody else. And if it's not assigned to a running back or a tight end or something like that, it's on the quarterback then.
Yeah, the quarterback has
Okay,
to know that's
the,
there.
the quarterback has to know that that's
Right.
coming. Okay,
Okay.
that's where you take a look at it, right? So it the offensive line scheme, all right, and the calls and stuff like that are basically to get into the way and to identify the 5 that are most likely to come. And
Hmm.
even if they're not the most likely to come, it's still big on big first,
Right.
all right? And you'll very rarely see an offensive lineman, one of the 5 offensive linemen picking up a DB.
Yeah. Unless he
So
tries to blitz up the middle.
well,
That's
even then, yeah, all right, it could be a dime situation and they're in a linebacker position or something like that, right? Okay. But um, for the most part, it's big on big.
yeah.
All right. There is no, if you were zone blocking pass protection, like we did in the old days 25, 30 years ago when I played and coached, right? If
Hmm.
you did that today, defensive coordinators would chew you up and spit you out So it's funny because when I played and coached, you zone pass blocked and you rush block.
Yeah.
All right.
Now it's the complete
Now it's
opposite.
completely the opposite. Now everything's a
Yeah.
zone run blocking, and now you're manning
Yeah.
up on your pass blocking.
Yeah.
Okay. So you identify your five, and if the five don't come, it's somebody else's responsibility. All right. It's either on the quarterback or whoever the extra protector is.
Eh,
And and again, when offensive linemen are just sitting there and they're making their calls, they're not picking out the DB. So if you see a DB that comes in clean, 99 times out of 100, that's not on the offensive line.
Right. And that's where it gets frustrating with Scotty with your rankings of 31st and
Yeah,
pass win rate. Yeah, that struggle, but also Liam Eichenberg was the center making the calls, and the struggles were nowhere near as bad when Connor Williams was at center. And there's a reason because Connor Williams was that guy in the locker room. He was the dude everybody listened to, and he was the one that called. I mean, Armstead the same way, but like when those guys would make the calls, you know, it was the right calls. Connor Williams knew what calls to make. Armstead knew what calls to make. Whereas Eichenberg, I don't think he knew really what calls to make, and it's a new position. So there's a lot that goes into that, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. And we could talk about that all day, so I don't want to get stuck on that. Because Greg, you would have. We know Tyreek got paid, didn't get any years added. Basically, just got a
right.
big raise. But the money looks like it's this year and next year where it's loaded to. I keep saying the window is basically 24 and 25 with 26 as like the let's run it back or we need it. We need one more year. But I feel like 24, 25 is like the year. But like you said, and the team has said 24 is a transition year. Greer and McDaniel both said
Yeah,
that. But I'll just jump into that.
yeah, no, and I might be in a minority here, but I do not think that this roster is as talented as last year's roster on a
It's not.
position by position basis. Okay. Um, and then you add in the fact that Phillips and Chubb are coming off a serious injury, and
That's it.
those injuries don't usually you don't get back from those injuries within that first year.
Hmm.
Phillips and Chubb are going to play this year, but
Oh, for sure.
they're not going to be what they were last year until 25, in my
Hmm.
opinion. All right, it takes a year. You know, an Achilles is an Achilles. A blown knee is a blown knee.
Yeah.
You can medically get back, but it still takes time for you to get football back, for lack of a better term, right?
Right.
And both of those guys, in my opinion, were having career years last year. Prior to the injuries, Phillips was having the best year of his career, and I'd argue
Right.
Chubb was as well.
And
Okay,
Phillips I was really high on Phillips when we drafted him, and then I'm like, all right, he needs to get to that next level and start winning 101s and not be schemed home. And he was doing it, and he was like, he was right there. He was right
it's
there
right there.
taking that next step,
It's
and
right there.
it hurt his Achilles. My heart sunk because I'm like,
Yeah,
he was there. He was getting ready to
yeah,
be the guy.
yeah. And we don't have a Van Ginkel. Okay, we have
Mhm.
two rookies that maybe can do it, but we really don't know yet. All right, Wilkinson. You know, any defensive tackle that we get is going to be a downgrade from what Wilkinson did.
Yeah, right.
Sealer had a career year. Long had a career year. I mean, it
The defensive
there's
line is the rough part for me.
and we got a lot of 30-plus year olds on that defense
Yeah.
now. All right. Tariq Hill's a year older now, and he played through a lot of nagging injuries last year. I don't see that getting any better.
Hmm.
OBJ is signed as a third wide receiver. He's injured right now. I don't know what to expect from him coming,
Right.
moving forward.
When it signed Snead obviously they wanted depth at wide receiver, at least for
Correct.
competition goes.
You know, we got an old secondary, all right, our starting secondary, I'll say. All right. Ramsey turns 30 this year. Fuller is 29. All right. Poyer's 33. I
Uh,
I mean, it just the combination of the talent that we lost and the talent that we brought in and what we're expecting from players who are 30 plus years old, just gives me pause. And
Yeah,
and I and and look, I think Greer did a really nice job of filling holes in a way, but I, yeah, you can't lose a 25-year-old and replace him with a 33-year-old and say we got better.
right.
All
Yeah,
right. And
he created the mess.
well, no, no, he did. I think last year he wanted to. He basically kind of went all in. Okay,
Yeah.
it was to his last cheap year. Okay,
Hmm.
you had money to spend. And bringing in Ramsey, bringing in Chubb, all of the
Yep.
high-priced defensive players and stuff like that. I think last year was the year they got injured, among other things. There were other problems with the team, but this year, paying Tua, you know, it was all going to change anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think there's a possibility if a lot of things go right, but it's the NFL, and I don't expect a lot of things to go right. I think you got to persevere. That's why I think 24 is kind of a transition. In 25 and 26, when I mean, they're over the cap now for 25, right? But that's going to change. Armstead's going away. Chubb's probably going to go away. They're going to free up some of that money. My big concern with this team moving forward, all right, Tua got paid, Hill got paid, Waddle got paid. That means all your money's on offense,
Yep.
essentially. Okay.
Yeah.
So you really got to start drafting well on defense.
And that's
And
not been
and
their forte at
yeah,
all.
and if you look at their starting defense right now, there's what, two draft picks on it? Okay. You
Uh,
know,
are we counting Phillips and Holland?
Phillips and Holland are my only two that I got, and maybe Chop starts or maybe one of the other rookies start. But
Yeah.
in the secondary, you got Holland. There's not a linebacker right now that's going to play that was drafted.
Yeah.
And their defensive line is basically going to be Chubb. Their starting defensive line when everybody's healthy is Chubb, Sealer, probably Campbell, and Phillips. And
Yeah.
Phillips is the only other draft pick. That means 9 out of your 11 players are free agents or trades,
Yep. And
and
yeah.
that's not sustainable.
And see, I really like Sealer a lot, and was a lot cheaper than Wilkins, and I'm fine with not paying interior defensive linemen. I would have been fine with paying Wilkins because he did step up last year, and in big moments, he made plays in a few games that we lost, and it was, hey, that's what you want to see out of a guy like that, and that was fantastic. But I was fine not paying him. But I like Brandon Campbell, but again, age. Poyer, again, age. I like those guys a lot, and they both are productive guys, and they both played really well like the last 2 years or so, and they're reliable guys. But how much can you rely on them? And having guys at those positions to me does feel like that. Now, I do think Greer got a little bit better at linebacker because to me, our linebacker core was at the bottom of the NFL. It wasn't very good. David Long was good, but him and Baker were very similar, and Baker ran around blocks so bad. It was bad. Like I grew frustrated watching Baker. He was not reliable in coverage. He was not reliable against the run. He was a one trick pony, blitz, 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 and that was about it. So we needed to get better at linebacker. And I think Brooks is an improvement. Anthony Walker is an improvement because he can actually cover, and that's something that our linebackers were not very good at. Duke Riley, who is a serviceable backup, a good special teamer, and a leader, but he's not like anything elite. But he was a good coverage linebacker, like on our team, and he was just average at that. I'm not knocking the guy, but everybody has ceilings. It's just a reality of the NFL. And Anthony Walker, to me, is a good coverage linebacker. Has played on a good Cleveland Browns defense. Brooks is a hitter, a thumper. That's what we've been missing, and then that allows David Long to kind of play a little bit more of a natural role. And David Long was very solid at spying the quarterback and did a good job against mobile quarterbacks. And that's something we need on the defense. To me, the problem lies in the guys in front of them. Again, we need is that going to be good enough? And will the secondary stay healthy? I have concerns about that. And the pass rush, Chop Robinson, is he ready for an expanded role? Is he going to be good enough in an expanded role? Is Oakball going to be good enough starter to fill in until Chubb comes back. Now, when Chubb comes back, I have no doubt that he'll be a solid player coming back, and he'll be a good player. He won't be like where he was, but I think he'll still be effective. Phillips, he's one of those freaking nature guys and takes his body very serious. We might get lucky with him, but again, next year he'll be a lot further along and more explosive,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
that's when you have a knee injury, when you have an Achilles injury, you lose explosiveness, even though you're medically ready to go.
Right.
And it usually takes a full season to get that back. That's why I think Chubb and Phillips will be good, but
Yeah.
I thought they were really good last year, and 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 right now I just don't see that happening.
And that's where the step back comes in. Because
Right.
Scotty, I see what you're saying. Um, Raphael had 2 knee surgeries for meniscus. Ooh, ow. But but no, that's part of it too. And I think our defense feels like it could take a step back. But we have some young guys that have been playing their butts off. And we
Yeah.
see the reports coming out of camp of guys playing well. If you want to touch on that, Greg.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's camp, all right. So I take everything with a grain of salt. I don't trust reporters to report anything correctly at camp. I've been going to camps for 25 years, and they miss the most obvious stuff every day when they're there. Um, so I don't expect or trust any of it. Okay, I mean, just as an example, I was at a training camp with when Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback, and they were just in uppers, no leg pads, no contact really, so it was just shells and shoulder pads, and he threw a post to Mike Wallace, who caught it and ran it for a touchdown. The crowd goes nuts. Okay, Lewis Delmas, the safety, basically pulled up, okay, and let Wallace catch the ball. All right. And as Wallace is running toward the end zone, okay, Delmas is digging a grave in the field where, fake digging a grave in the field where he would have killed Wallace. All right.
Yeah.
Ryan Tannehill's getting bitched at by his offensive coordinator because he threw into coverage. Okay. And all of the reports were like, Ryan Tannehill completes long touchdown pass to
Yeah.
Mike Wallace, and it was like, are you guys even watching what's going on? All right,
And the
that's
fans
not
love it
what.
because it's exciting, but
Yeah, and the
it's
fans don't
it's
notice what's going on, but
yeah.
like I said, Louis Delma is pretending to dig a grave where he buried the guy. So
Man, what
I
a
mean,
good
it's
safety
just
duo.
stuff like that. It's just and it's just all of that stuff coming out of camp. Okay, you
Yeah.
know, and you see it with other teams too. Okay, Aaron Rodgers completes this nice pass that Aaron Rodgers would have been sacked.
Hmm.
Okay, all right. It's those types of things that it is what it is. A couple of years ago, I was at camp with the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, and Tua completes 9 out of 11 passes against the Eagles defense and 11 on 11. Right. Well, it
Hmm.
was a third down drill, and all right, and they only converted like four, maybe five out of the 11 third downs, but he
So that's
completed 9 out of 11, so everybody was happy. It was like,
yeah.
what are
And
you
see,
doing?
it's missing context.
It's missing context. So I take all training camp with a little bit
Yeah.
of grain of salt. And then the other thing I want to say about training camp as well, and I know we're running a little bit over what
Yeah,
we
you're
wanted to
okay.
run, but um,
I set you
the
up
other
for a
thing,
rant that you wanted to go on.
my other training camp rant is we have no idea what's scripted. Okay, every play is scripted. The offense knows exactly what the defense is going to do on this play. The defense knows exactly what the offense is going to do on this play. All right. And there are certain plays within that script that favor the defense or favor the offense. So you have no idea what's going on. All right. This was a great pass breakup. Oh, that might have been a defensive play. The offense might not have been running a route combination that they usually run, but the defense wanted to see what was going to happen and if all the coverage calls and all the adjustments were going to be made correctly. All right. And it's the same thing on the offense. All right. And the hell, Mike McDaniel might even tell Tua that, hey, cover two's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never know what exactly is going to happen. And the reason coaches set it up like that is because you can't have the offense beat the hell out of the defense day in, day out in camp. All right. You can't have the defense do it to the offense. You got to build the team, and the team has to maintain confidence. So you give a little and you take a little. Okay.
Yeah.
And we really don't know what's going on a lot of times. So take everything with a grain of salt. All right. You might see Tua or Skyler or somebody force a pass and it gets intercepted or tipped, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, look how bad that was." Well, he was told to throw to post here,
Yeah.
okay? Because the defense wanted to see what would happen, okay? I mean, it's just that's what coaches do. All
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
especially in camp, you got to see what works and what
Well,
doesn't.
it was
All
like the
right,
second day of camp, Tua threw an interception because Zeke Vanderbilt, who's has been performing well according to the
yeah,
camp reports about that. Um, but he tipped the pass and it was intercepted. And even
correct,
some of the Tua supporters like, oh my God, blah blah blah. Well, dude, first of all, it's the first couple of days of camp. Relax. And
correct.
I'm someone who's critical of
And,
Tua. Second of all, dude, it could have been something where it's like, hey, give the defense this look, like
yeah,
you said. And the McDaniel could tell defense, "Hey, Weaver, give us this look. I want to see how this play works
correct,
against that. Let's see what happens with that because
correct.
Tua struggled against this coverage. Give him that coverage. I want to see if
So
this new look
yeah,
works."
you start out in OTAs and in off-season workouts and stuff like that, running what I'll call 20 different concepts, and every concept has a dozen different varieties, and you got 250 plays you're thinking
Mhm.
about doing, right? All right. By the time you get out of OTAs, you're probably down to 15, and then you get into training camp and you're running those 15 live, and you're seeing what can and can't work, what your players can and can't execute. You're probably down to 10 or 11, maybe 12 when you get out of camp. Okay. And then when you prepare for a team on any given week, you're probably down to 7 or 8. Okay.
Mhm.
That's just the natural progression. It's practice. You're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
trying to figure
On
out
both
what people's
sides of the
strengths
ball.
are. Yeah,
On both sides of the ball. That's why you script it. That's why you say,
exactly.
I need to see what this is going to do to my defense. So run this play for me. Okay.
Yeah.
We run it, and it's the same thing there. Now, the joint practices are a little bit different. Okay, the
Mhm.
the two teams will coordinate, and they'll say, okay, this is what we want. They agree on. All right, these are individual drill times. These are this is that. All
Right,
right.
right.
The defense and the offense probably doesn't know what's actually coming, but there'll be limitations built around it as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Miami, McDaniel might tell Atlanta's coach, hey, don't blitz. We haven't worked on blitz pickup. Okay, I don't want to see it in the practices. Let's just
Yeah,
go base. You can twist, you can do whatever, you know, those types of things. All right, and that might be a weird example. Okay, but it's those types of communications going back and forth, and the Falcons will have the same type of things for the Miami offense as well. All right, hey, let's not do it this, let's not do that, but they won't necessarily know what's coming. Okay,
yeah. It's just kind of
uh,
like, here's the parameters. We're gonna play
here's
within these
here's the
parameters.
parameters that we're
We're
going
gonna
to
work
play
around.
within
Yeah.
and practice within. All right, so I like joint practices. I actually think teams get more out of joint
I
practices
did
in a
too.
way. Uh, 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 they get more out of the joint practices because it's still a controlled environment, but you can actually see physical reactions a little bit better, and you're not hitting the same people over and over again. Because
Right.
what starts
Fresh
happening
meat.
in camp, well, what starts happening in camp is you learn tendencies. All right.
Hmm.
Hey, Tariq Hill doesn't like doing going. He's on the right side of the formation. He doesn't like running that out. Okay, he'd rather run a post. So you cheat the post. All right, where the other team might not know that, right? And that's
Yeah.
just a weird
And,
example,
and
right?
it just keeps
But
you kind of sharp and keeps you from getting
yeah,
kind of lazy and complacent and stuff like that. But
correct. And
we're
and
good.
and you're beating on the same people over and over again. It just gets old after a while. So you want to beat on new people.
Right. It's like Evan. We beat on him so much,
Oh,
just want to beat on new people, Love you, Evan. Well, we're going on. We can go on for this for a
yes,
while. We want to wrap this up, guys. thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like,
Yep.
subscribe, and share, please. We're gonna come back. We're gonna talk a little bit more about training camp and all that, joint practices. Greg, when you come back, I want to sit down and talk to you about what you saw and
Yeah.
some notes and all. And I'm really curious. I actually feel good about like Tua physically, how he's lost weight. Just let's see the mental aspect and let's give him the
No,
opportunity to see what happens this year, the next couple of years. So
I am hopeful for this season. I'm looking forward to going to camp if I can get out my front door here, but it's going to be fun.
yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Well, you stay
All
safe,
right.
guys. Until next
Yeah.
time, fins up.